Outlook. With Lisa Kelly and Louie DePalma.
Welcome to The Outlook with Lisa and Louie. Good to see you, Lisa.
Good to see you, Louie.
And today's episode theme is Inclusion Leaders in the Disability Space.
So who are the people from the disability and business communities who are helping make the workplace more accessible and more equitable? We'll be speaking to two of them today. I wish we had time to feature all the individuals who've helped make a change, but today we have two very special guests. They've affected and changed the world, influenced the people around them through their words, their actions, and by sharing their experiences and knowledge.
Yes, leaders can influence members of the public, NGOs, and the business community. We have heard the phrase, nothing about us without us, which really speaks to, let us help, let us share our lived experience. You know, Lisa, I'm right-handed, and if I'm designing something, I'm going to design something for a right-handed person, but then I'm excluding a left-handed person.
Not only excluding the left-handed person, Louie, you're excluding people with permanent injuries on the right-hand side, people with limb loss or limb difference on the right-hand side.
And that takes us to today's hot topic.
New ideas and innovation. There are so many international and Canadian companies that are bringing new products and services into the disability space to make the world more accessible for people with disabilities. Unfortunately, there's no single space that you can go to locate them all. So you got to keep your ears open, share the ideas or the companies that you hear about at your office chat, and perhaps have regular conversations on what's out there. I'm going to share with you a few of my favorites. AccessNow.com. It's a crowdsourced app that pinpoints accessible locations in your city. So you know beforehand what accessible services are available or not available at that business. AccessToSuccess.ca. This is Canada's first accelerator for accessibility, mental health, and aging startups. So you can find resources, products, services in those subjects at that website. Of course, the app Be My Eyes. So if you want to answer a phone call, you can help somebody who is visually impaired or blind, maybe read a label for a medication, or share a price tag or the color of a jeans that they're going to be purchasing. It's a great app. I volunteer on that. RevealByAwakeLabs.com is wearable-enabled support for people with cognitive disabilities. So, for instance, you can access a smartwatch that will be able to report in real time changes on stress or strong emotions. We have things like eSight, electronic eyewear for the visually impaired. Microsoft is doing a lot in this space. You can regularly check on their updates for controllers on Xbox, or even simple features like embedded best practices that they put into their very, very familiar tools, like closed captions on Teams, or using the accessibility checker in Microsoft Word and PowerPoint to make sure that the documents that you send out are accessible to screen readers. And of course, the more familiar local Stopgap Foundation, which is an amazing company that actually has, created and delivered over 2,000 small ramps to access small businesses.
Lisa, that's such a great product, Stopgap. It really allows persons with disabilities to access storefronts with elevated lips, at the curbside, where there isn't sufficient space to build a permanent ramp. So just one small innovation like that, right, is just opened a whole new ability for people to access goods and services that perhaps they couldn't access before.
Yeah, great tools. Check them out.
Now let's move to our featured segment for this episode. I am pleased to introduce two inclusion leaders that work in high performance jobs and are using their platform to create awareness about the issues that affect persons with disabilities. Zeus Sequeira is a senior manager for strategic sourcing at RBC, and Tayyaba Azeem works in risk management at CIBC.
Louie and I sat down with Tayyaba and Zeus to have this conversation.
Tayyaba and Zeus, thanks for joining us today. Tayyaba, let's start with you. Can you tell us about your career journey?
I began my career in marketing, and then I switched fields to finance once I got my Fulbright scholarship, and I worked in investments and in risk for a few years. Currently, I work at CIBC in data analytics. And I also run an initiative called Speak Up, which empowers people with disabilities to lead fuller lives.
What made you switch from marketing to finance?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at the time when I was in marketing, I felt that if I had to grow in my career, there was a lot of emphasis on how you speak, and and the feedback that I got from a lot of people was that since I have a stutter, so it would help me if I got into a field where there were a lot more numbers and charts which could support how I speak. So I switched fields because of that. And then also because I had an interest in finance, I had a lot of, I knew a lot of people in the field, and I was quite impressed by the work which they did. So I thought it was a good move.
Well, thank you so much. Zeus, how about your career path?
For sure. So I've been in procurement my whole career, and for people who've never heard of procurement, which is almost everyone, it is centered around designing strategies that help an organization save money and reduce third-party risk from the contracts for the services and products that we procure from third-party vendors. So I started out as a consultant at Accenture, and initially, focused on consulting. I decided around the 4 year mark that I wanted to do an MBA because I wanted to be able to solve business critical problems that were, core to the strategy of an organization. I also wanted to move to North America. I heard that Canada was a place that embraced inclusion and diversity, and that's why Canada was my first choice, where I now lead corporate real estate procurement for RBC globally. Unlike Taba, who's made some great changes and she's also running her own initiative with Speak Up now, I've sort of stuck to one career line. But I guess I'm thankful for the growth that I've experienced along that journey.
So you mentioned that you started out as a consultant. What's the main difference between being a consultant and an employee of a company?
That's a great question. I feel that the main difference is with a consultant, you pitch a strategy that seems really amazing. But as an employee, you're on the hook for executing that strategy and making it come to fruition. And I feel that that level of accountability is what is different between consulting and being an employee within an organization.
Yeah, nicely stated. I remember years ago when I used to work with consultants, I used to always marvel that they would come in, give us some great ideas, but then we had to do the execution. So very nicely explained.
Yeah.
Zeus, how did you get into inclusion?
So I've struggled with cerebral palsy my whole life, and growing up in India in the 80s and 90s wasn't easy. especially, at a time where there wasn't a lot of awareness around disabilities and there was also significant stigma. So I would say that it was more a path that was put in front of me, not one that I chose, but one that I embraced because I was able to overcome the biases against me, and I was able to achieve success in my career. And now I sort of want to pass the elevator back down, and help people who are going through the same adversity to find success along their journey.
Well said. Tayyaba, how about you? How did you get into the inclusion space? You mentioned Speak Up. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that as well.
When I had started out, I wasn't even sure if stuttering was a disability, because the perception at the time was that stuttering is caused by low confidence and anxiety, and was thus assumed to be curable if you got over your fears. And so there were a lot of misconceptions about stuttering, and the few times that I had shared experiences with people, I just felt invalidated. And I guess at some point I had relied on others to speak up for me, and when it didn't happen, or it didn't happen the way I thought it should, I at that point thought that I need to speak up for myself. Around the same time, I also I I met a few other people who had disabilities, and other types of disabilities, and the experiences that they had shared with me about interviews, and even if they had been hired, I saw that there was a a, a a common thread there. And so at that point, I thought that it was my responsibility to get into the conversation.
Zeus, back to you again, because I know that you mentioned that you've dealt with cerebral palsy throughout your life. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that whole path?
So cerebral palsy is a condition that affects your motor skills, and it gives you a little bit of disturbance in your gait when you move. At the time, as I said, when I was young, there was no awareness around it. In fact, I never even knew that I had cerebral palsy. I just thought that there was something wrong with the way that I moved and the way I walked. It was heavily stigmatized, and that did play a huge effect in my confidence. In fact, as Taba mentioned, for the longest time, I felt like I didn't have a voice, and I felt like I didn't deserve a voice to speak up and make my opinions heard. I felt like, ironically, I was almost invisible until I started my career and I, started contributing to society.
Everyone wants to know that they are accepted at work. Everyone wants to feel like they are listened to. And everyone deserves a voice. That is why I believe that everyone should feel at home and part of a family wherever they work, because we all want to be included.